Greetings, everybody. It's Al Everson from Spam Resource. Today we're going to do something a little different. Don't usually do videos, but I thought this would be a fun way to put some information together. So I'm going to give you a crash course on the list unsubscribe header, everything you need to know, how it works, and what to do with it as an email sender or email platform that sends messages on behalf of others. Let's dive right into it. Who am I? If you don't know who I am, head on over to spamresource.com. That's basically my brain dumped out for everybody on the internet to see, talking about email marketing best practices, deliverability, spam fighting, and this is all stuff that I've been doing for a while now. I've been probably sent my first email message and built my first spam filters back in 1997 or 1998. So I've been around the block, been doing this deliverability thing for a while. What are we going to talk about today in the crash course? I'm going to talk about what is the list unsub header, what do you do with it, what are the different ways that it works. There's 3 different mechanisms in there, which ISPs and mailbox providers support list unsub, where and when do they show list unsub links, how does post one-click unsub fit into all of this. It's required by Gmail and Yahoo in 2024. So what does that change? How do we do that? What are the considerations and gotchas when you build list unsub one-click post support? I'll touch on the data that you'll find need to pass in URLs, what will be in the post data, what needs to be included in your DKIM signature. And finally, I've got a test widget where you can sort of do a little bit of post testing yourself to connect to my server harmlessly and actually test your list unsub post in action with curl. And I'll close with where you can go to learn more about this if you want to dig even deeper beyond what I'm going to cover here. Let's get started, shall we? What is list unsubscribe? List unsubscribe is a mechanism that goes in an email header that places like Gmail, Yahoo, and Microsoft Outlook.com pick up this email header and they show it in their user interface. The goal there is to make it easy for subscribers to unsubscribe. And this is a benefit both to senders and to receivers. It's good for senders because if it's easy to unsubscribe, people are less likely to lodge spam complaints when they want off your list. It's good for receivers too, in that it promotes confidence in their platform. They know that they're standing up a mechanism that makes it easy for subscribers to control what mail they want to receive. So that's a good thing, really. And now it goes all the way back to 1998 when it was first designed in an RFC, an Internet Request for Comments document, but only recently has it started to grow in popularity. And now today, in 2023, going into 2024, this new version of it coming from RFC 8058 from 2017 adds one-click unsubscribe functionality using list unsub post. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. Whenever I use the term list unsub post or list unsub one click, I'm really talking about the same thing. That's that new functionality. Google requires this functionality starting from February 1st. Yahoo requires it as well. They haven't specifically set an exact date, but they have made it clear that it's required in Q1 2024. And don't worry about typing out all these links. I'll have them in the description box below and in the blog post on Spam Resource. So they'll be right there for you to click on when and if you need them. So that's the history of where you want to go if you want to read about like the underlying definitions of every single thing used in list unsub. That'll be in the RFCs. But at a high level, what do you need to know about list unsub to get it to work properly for you? There are 3 mechanisms involved here. They're just 3. There's nothing too complex about them. They're just 3 different ways to offer up a way for people to unsubscribe from your email messages. That's mail to, URL or HTTP, and post. So mail to is really just where the user clicks unsub and an email message is generated by the email client. Like Apple Mail on iOS is a perfect example of this. I'll show you an example of that in a screenshot here in a second. You click on unsub in the "This is a mailing list" section of a message header in Apple iOS Mail. It generates that email back to the sender. It's coded in there in the address. It's got a salted sort of email address username portion that tells the receiving server, the mailing list management tool, whether that be your ESP or CRM tool or what have you, tells it what is the correct address to unsubscribe. So that's just mail-based. It's just very simple. It works offline. That's probably the reasoning behind a mail-based mechanism, is that it doesn't have to be online and live, the server doesn't have to respond at that exact second, but they can still process and handle the unsubscribe. It's very resilient to internet issues and downtime. The next sort of level up there is URL, or I've also called this the HTTP methodology of list unsubscribe. In this case, what happens here is your Yahoo or Microsoft or Gmail shows an unsubscribe link in the headers or around the edge of an email message. The user clicks on that, and Gmail or Microsoft or Yahoo redirects the user to the landing page or unsubscribe center or profile center to allow that user to complete the unsubscribe action. Generally speaking, you don't want to automatically unsub the user when they land on the page unless you have some sort of mechanism set up to automatically handle capture or recapture or invisible capture. You do need to worry about bot unsubs here, or people doing silly things by infiltrating email messages, clicking on other people's links. And so that does happen, especially with security devices and software as a service platforms following all links to look for bad stuff. So right there, you don't necessarily want that to be a one-click unsub. Best practice, in my opinion, is for that to be a two-click unsub. In other words, first click was they clicked on the unsub link in Gmail. They go to the landing page that says confirm your unsub. They click the button again. Boom, they're off the page. It should be fully CAN-SPAM compliant. It should be easy for users to follow, and it should prevent bots or unsavory stuff accidentally unsubbing people when they don't want to be unsubbed. Then the highest tier, the best tier, this new frontier, what we're talking about today, the whole reason for this presentation, is post, list unsub post, aka one-click list unsubscribe. Now, what happens in this case is when you click on the unsub link in Gmail, in Hotmail, in Yahoo, the mail client, webmail provider, or email application silently makes a call back to a certain URL via a certain mechanism, an HTTPS post mechanism, to tell that sending mail server, to tell the mailing list manager to unsubscribe that person. The post mechanism is meant to indicate that this is it, this is the one click, there's no confirmation, there's no follow-up, you just instantly unsubscribe the person right then and there. The mail client doesn't display any sort of output. It's meant to assume that the unsubscribe was successful in that case. Now, what ISPs, internet service providers, or MVPs, mailbox providers, support list unsub? There's more than this. I don't have the biggest list of every single one in the world, but you got your big ones here, right? This is what we call Maggie, Microsoft, Apple, Gmail, and Yahoo. They all have support for it. Currently, Apple only has support for the mail-to method. I wonder if they will come around and have the one-click support that others are adding. I suspect so in the future. Gmail and Android has some support for it, but I'm light on details. Beyond the big webmail providers, there are other ones around the world, especially in the EU. Quite a few of these have support for list unsubscribe. So, but if you're an American-based sender, B2C sender, just these top four are going to be 90+% of your subscriber base. So it's very important to, if you want to support as much of your subscriber base as possible and comply with the new sender requirements from Gmail and Yahoo, that you properly implement this list unsubscribe support. Now, where does it show? If you look at the top right of the screen here, you can see Apple iOS. Here's an example where it says this message is from a mailing list. User clicks unsubscribe. User gets a confirm in the Apple iOS mail user interface. They click on it, and a mail message is automatically generated by Apple Mail back to the sender's email platform requesting unsubscribe. So that you can't see the to address here, but it's salted, meaning it's encoded with the hashed recipient data. So it's a unique address. It's a per recipient address. So sending to that address tells it what the right address to unsubscribe is. You don't put a raw email address in any of these tokens. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but it's effectively an encoded token that triggers, that tells the platform which sending client, which list, which recipient is the right one to unsubscribe. So that's Apple. Then you've got Microsoft, Gmail, and Yahoo, all three of which do similar things here. They effectively put a very simple text unsubscribe link very near the from address, right? Either next to or above it in the user interface, making it easy for the subscriber to find where to click if they want to make the mail stop. Now, when does it show? This is a common question I get where they say, somebody will tell me, hey, I've implemented list unsubscribe in Gmail, but it's not showing up in the user interface. And that seems to be on purpose. That seems to be because Gmail will only show a list unsubscribe mechanism. They'll only show an unsubscribe button, that link, if they think you're a good sender. They think you're a bad guy, you think you're sending unwanted mail, phishing, spoofing, lacking authentication, whatever, anything that doesn't comply with their best practices or doesn't have a good reputation, Gmail is not going to show that unsubscribe button. Now, the other entities out there are not quite as selective, if you will. It seems to show the list unsubscribe mechanism whenever it's there. There might be some cases where somebody's so bad a sender that they might not show it. I personally haven't run into that, so I can't speak to that. But the key there is most of the time it's going to show up in Apple iOS. It's going to show up in Microsoft and Yahoo. It's not going to show up in Gmail until and unless Gmail thinks you have a good reputation. Makes troubleshooting or makes testing and setup a little trickier in that, if you've only sent 3 email messages from your email platform, doesn't have a long history, doesn't have a good sending reputation going back for a good period of time, is probably not going to show that unsub link just yet. And from my perspective for testing, I tell people to test on Microsoft instead of trying to test on Gmail. Makes it a little easier. They're more likely to show the link right out of the gate. Post is the future, right? We talked on the different ways that you can do this to handle a list unsubscribe. And by the future, I mean specifically that Gmail and Yahoo have written into the rules that starting here in the first quarter of 2024, specifically February 1st for Gmail, if you send enough messages to Gmail, send more than 5,000 messages per day, you have to have this list unsubscribe post mechanism implemented. So where Gmail and Yahoo lead, others will follow. So I wouldn't implement this just for 1 or 2 ISPs. I'd implement it across the board. Go through this mechanism, set it up now, make sure your platform supports it so that all of your platform customers are easily supported and don't have to worry about it. And then you're done. And then you just let it run and it'll handle things automatically. It'll track unsubscribes for you. And that's a good thing. Header examples. What does list unsub post look like when it's successfully implemented in headers? Here's an example header from a send from MailChimp. You can see we've got 3 bits here, right? We've got the list unsubscribe header. It's got 2 things in it. The first one is a link, right? It starts with HTTPS. That's the HTTP link used for both post or one-click and URL, or the old style of URL or HTTP list unsub, where you just visit the page or you get redirected to the page and you can finalize your unsub or adjust your preferences. So that's the twofold thing here. That's the use of the URL mechanism is expanded. It's going to do 2 things now in the future where it only did 1 thing in the past. In the past, it would only drive to a landing page to complete the unsubscribe. Now it also needs to understand post connections and one-click connections and unsub automatically without any sort of interstitial step when it's found that it's a post, that it's an unsubscribe one-click mechanism. How does it do that? That's where step 3 comes into play there, the list unsub post header. That's something that the ISP looks for, and that's the sender's platform telling the mailbox provider that they support this new post one-click mechanism. And then for legacy support in here, you can see in number 2 there, that's mail to. That's the encoded email address that you can send to, or that a mailbox provider's platform can send to automatically unsubscribe that recipient. So in this case, if you copied that email string and you typed the whole thing in, sent it a message, you would unsubscribe me from this mailing list for MailChimp. That's actually a good thing to note, right? It doesn't actually sort of verify the person sending the unsub request in any way. Anyone could unsub anyone else. And so the way you prevent silly stuff from happening there is you make sure that that's a salted, one-way encrypted link that corresponds to a lookup in the send platform to know who to unsub, but isn't decodable by anybody else. You don't want me to be able to figure out how to hack together the email address to send to unsubscribe you. that would be somebody, you would seem fine. People would hardly ever use it, but then somebody would try to do something silly and send a million of them and drive a whole bunch of people nuts. And it would be bad news. So that's also why you don't want to put email addresses visible in any of these tokens. You don't want them hackable, changeable in any possible way that's obvious to the recipient. Considerations, right? We just talked about this. Never put an email address in the URL. The email addresses will show up in server logs. They can get cached in search engines. This will invite bad guys to try to change up URLs to subscribe or unsubscribe other people against their wishes or desires. Ultimately, it's a privacy nightmare. You're going to end up with people on your mailing list or in your logs or PII that you didn't mean to have. You do not want this. I've run into this before where we've been around long enough that I've seen people try to do it this way, and we actually saw those pages ended up getting cached by Google, and it meant that you could search for a certain URL and find a whole bunch of email addresses of people who didn't want their email addresses found. So it's bad news all around. Obviously, it goes without saying, you want to use HTTPS always. Encrypt it properly, no unencrypted HTTP. And this just makes sense because, for example, the providers already consider TLS, transport layer security, to be a best practice. So not only does that apply to web connections, but it also applies to transitive mail over SMTP. Gmail for a long time has put a big scary warning on messages if they don't use TLS for SMTP email message transition. Gmail has made it a requirement going forward that you must use TLS and SMTP. So same goes here. Best practice to make sure that your any sort of API or web connections back for unsub processing are also encrypted. Keep in mind too, when you do build a processor to receive unsubscribe one-click data back from subscribers, the post data will effectively be empty. There'll be nothing in there but the text list unsubscribe equals one click. Right? You'll have one field called list unsubscribe with one value called one click. So that's not where you're going to get the subscriber token from. The subscriber token is going to be in your URL, encrypted, salted, whatever, just like if it was a get view or a page view. So you'll just have to test and see where exactly in your code you're going to pull the subscriber variable from. It's not going to be where you expect it to be from post form input. It can be a little confusing, but do a dump of all the data you're getting back for environmental variables for your web development environment or what have you for that gateway form, and you'll be able to see exactly where it is. It's not in the place where you expect for a post form. Now, DKIM signature. DKIM signature, this is something that I almost missed. It's a best practice, but it's also in the spec as well, in the requirements here, that you must make sure that your list unsubscribe and list unsubscribe post headers are included in the headers that are covered by the cryptographic DKIM signature for your email message. That's so bad guys can't take the message and change the header and try to redirect unsub somewhere else to try to trick people into thinking they're unsubscribing when perhaps they're only confirming their email addresses to spammers. So what this does is this is a good thing to prevent weird stuff from happening in the event that somebody does something silly with DKIM replay. It's also just a best practice overall that you want this header to be know that it's safe, that it hasn't been changed in transit or after delivery. So you can see here it's in this list of headers. That's the H field in the DKIM signature. All the headers you put in there are in there, right? Subject, from, reply to, date, message ID, et cetera, going all the way down to including the list unsubscribe and the list unsubscribe post header. Now, if you want to test this on your own, please do. I've got a little server set up with a little widget on it. You can tickle it a reasonable number of times. Please maybe don't do millions a minute, but you can certainly tickle it here and there as needed to test it and see that you're actually able to post data properly. And then, of course, build your own and test against that as well, because you want to make sure that you can actually retrieve the code back out of there and actually log the unsubscribe properly. But this is, I built this because I think it's a good mechanism to show the different ways that the URL gets handled when it's a get or a view versus a post. So if it's a get or a view, you just go to the URL. You can copy and paste that URL. Again, it'll be in the description below. You'll get a page, a confirmation page. You can click on the unsub button to confirm your unsub, and you're done. And in fact, I built the unsub button as a post that shows the post mechanism, the way that would work in that case. You don't have to do that. If you have an existing unsub button, you don't have to change that. You could continue to use the same confirm your unsub button that you're using today. Now, call that same URL as a post. And there's how you can do it with curl, the Unix command line utility. Basically, call that again, and the output will just say unsub is completed. And what I've done is I've taken that code, the AB1234, pulled it out of the URL variables that was passed as if it was a get instead of a post. So I took that, and I give you some output to tell you what's going on. You don't really have to have output there. You can just sort of silently be done. It might be good, though, for troubleshooting as you build it to at least say pass, fail, and have some sort of status information. Then, after you've tested that, now it's time to test post against your own unsubscribe handler. Note that the unsubscribe token, like I said, it's in the URL query string. It's not in the post form field. The only post form value you're going to have there is that list unsubscribe value, list unsubscribe field with the value of 1 click. Time to learn more. All right, so I've knowledge dumped. I've brain dumped as much as I can think of here to help get you started. I hope that helps. You'll see you can leave a comment on Spam Resource if you want to ask more questions on that. But there are lots of people out there that know more than me, and so I encourage you to Google. I encourage you to follow up with these links as well. Right, you can find the RFCs for the list unsub post support down there at the bottom. Word to the wise, Steve Atkins has got a great article called How to Unsubscribe, where he dives more into detail on how list unsubscribe is supposed to work. And then Yahoo has a specific post on how list unsub post works in their estimation. That's another great bit of reference material. Google and Yahoo both have more documentation on their additional sender requirements, because there's more than just this list unsub post that you need to comply with upcoming here Q1 in 2024. So make sure you read all of that and be aware of all the changes that are coming to be able to be a good sender and to enable successful deliverability, successful inbox placement for your clients and friends and family. And of course, please visit spamresource.com, where I've been blogging for 20 plus years on deliverability and email best practices. And thank you so much for your time today. I hope you found this interesting. Please let me know, either comments below on YouTube or on the blog, or drop me an email, aiverson@spamresource.com. Thank you so much. Have a great day.